Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday, June 14th, 2024. Time for another show. Time for Flag Day. It's Flag Day, which I guess is like the biggest day of Martha Ann Alito's life. Yeah, or certainly the biggest day on the calendar. Bigger than Christmas, bigger than Easter, better than Cats, better than E.T., what have you. All right, Flag Day. Very exciting for her, I'm sure. In all likelihood, stuff now flying right side up at her house because she doesn't pay attention to those peons who yell at her, etc., etc., except now she's trapped. Okay, so we've got that to take care of, and someone has to go and photograph what flags are flying outside of the Alito homes and make sure everything is on the up and up. Let's see. Other things to catch up on. Justice was just messaging to let us know that everything is A-OK and working as usual. Interesting moment here. One of the stories that he noted I did see in passing on my way to work this morning. Crossing the kitchen, I happened to see this thing, and I think I put away in pocket. Just sort of like an amazing moment in journalism. We read yesterday that what did we read? The Politico account of Trump coming back to Capitol Hill, they noted, for the first time since January 6th, returning to the scene of the crime, as we put it here on this show. And I saw no one else make that observation anyway. And speaking to congressional Republicans, giving them some sort of strategy talk / pep talk / photo op, I guess, which is unusual for several reasons, not the least of which is ordinarily members of Congress run the other way as fast as possible when they are asked for a photo op with a convicted felon, but not this one. Anyway, we discussed what he had to say. We didn't discuss much of the substance of what he had to say because there wasn't much substance. It was supposed to be a strategy session, but as usual, Trump, pretty much changed the agenda, and it became a gripe session. And he let everybody know how unfair everything was for him in life in general, and I guess how he's just constantly victimized by the rigged system, et cetera, et cetera. But he also made clear to them that he felt that they should understand that it is their duty as Republicans and members of Congress to pass legislation to undo his convictions. I stand before you a convicted felon right now, but you should pass legislation that will get rid of those convictions and also make sure that I can never be convicted of anything else ever again. There's in the real world, no existing mechanism by which the Congress could do such a thing. But, what do they care about what the rules are? And then, of course, there's, preemptive things that they can do. Some things that they imagine that they can do, some things that they think they can do that they imagine will work, which I'm not too sure about. We spent some time on that yesterday. The idea of allowing for former presidents, if they are charged with state-level crimes by various states, to transfer their cases, to have their cases removed to federal court. But I guess, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, at this point, I will tell you only this. I went to law school, and we learned what happens when that occurs. And one of the things that's not on the list is you get away with those crimes. So I'm not certain exactly what they are thinking will happen, but as I have mentioned in the past, these days saying, I went to law school and I learned how things work doesn't really work the same way. You could say that, but if 5 justices say, well, that was the way things worked, but you were wrong about that. You were, again, pre-wrong. You just didn't know how wrong you were. Everybody in America, at every law school in America, thought that the reality was that if you remove your state-charged case to federal court, a federal judge, using the federal rules of evidence, federal rules of criminal procedure, etc., and federal juries will try you on those state charges and apply state law from the federal bench. That's what removal will get you, which means if you're charged with, 34 counts of fraud, etc., and by, I don't know, again, hypothetically, the state of New York, the people of the state of New York, if you were to remove that case to federal court, you would be tried in the Southern District of New York's federal courthouse, and they would dust off their New York statutes and say, all right, I'm a federal judge, but I can read state law. I can understand state law. I can even consult with people and figure out if I'm interpreting state law the way state law judges would, and then I'll just handle this case. And a federal judge and federal jury would have pondered the same evidence, presented to them in the same way, and probably have come to the same conclusion. I'm not certain that they're getting what they want out of this. But to be sure that they do get what they want, Donald Trump let them know, you need to overturn my conviction. Not a thing that this branch does. But again, let's say they just say they want to do that, and somebody says, that's unconstitutional. You don't have that authority. And 5 robed mystics say they do. Well, then it's done. At least temporarily. Anyway, so most of the time he spent there was a gripe session, and the rest of it was how we should be planning to do the same thing to Democrats once we seize power. Oh, and P.S., I know a lot of you are into policy, so we're going to there's going to be a tax thing that we're going to do, and some foreign policy stuff, and also entitlements will be on the table, which means slashing them. This is apparently a murder table. You put the things on the table that you want to cut them in half. It's one of those magician's tricks. Anyway, all of this being the case, it was interesting to note, as Parker Malloy did on Blue Sky, that the AP, Associated Press, I guess decided in their neutral way that they had a very different view of what happened when Donald Trump went back to the scene of the crime and lectured everybody that they should be using the legislative power to erase his criminal record. They described it this way: Donald Trump made a triumphant return to Capitol Hill on Thursday, his first with lawmakers since the January 6, 2021 attacks. No mention of the fact that he prompted and ordered those attacks and refused to help quell them once they started, and instead watched them on TV like it was a sporting event. Embraced by energized House and Senate Republicans who find themselves reinvigorated by his bid to retake the White House. Wow. And as Parker points out, this tweet is perhaps one of the most embarrassing things I've read from a professional news organization in a while, just indistinguishable from something Trump's campaign would write, although they wouldn't write it nearly as coherently as that probably, but there'd probably be a few more superlatives in there. Talk about crowd sizes or whatever. This was the largest Congress ever assembled, millions of members of Republican districts. But yeah, that's sort of an astonishing view of what he actually did there. Had he even gone back and spoken about a coherent policy platform, and had it been well received, that would still be over the top, really, for describing this visit, a triumphant return to the scene of the crime, really, honestly. So, shame on you, AP. That was poorly put, and you should withdraw that immediately. So, let's see. Other items regarding yesterday's visit are available as well. There was... Is this... this is Greg Sargent discussing the items we saw yesterday, including the quote in the Politico report from the one named Republican member who came away from the meeting and was willing to say on the record, hey, this wasn't very good, actually, and the things he's asking us to do are actually bad. And then there was, I think, one anonymous quote on the can you say it's on the record? I mean, it was reported, but on the record has a specific meaning. So, which I think would preclude anonymous attribution. Anyway, Greg Sargent writing over at the New Republic, the top Top Gopper, as they put it, GOP-er, but Top Gopper, I think that's better, that rhymes, accidentally wrecks Trump's biggest lie about Jack Smith. Anyway, his biggest lie about Jack Smith. As Trump presses Mike Johnson to defund the special counsel, one of his other special requests, right? Not only do you need to overturn the convictions I was just handed in New York, but you need to get rid of the special counsel, just defund them, erase the budget for the special counsel investigation and prosecution. Now, I have a feeling, by the way, that they would, if they were able to engineer it, would go ahead and do this prosecution for free at this point. But that's not the way things work, and it's certainly not the way things are supposed to work, defunding. Now, this is, of course, defunding the police, which at some point in the recent past, Republicans were pretty sure was something they were going to tar Democrats with. Or rather, I guess I should say, that was something that centrist to almost right-leaning, if there are such things, Democrats were pretty sure they could tar left-leaning Democrats with, saying they wanted to defund the police. But, you know, riding to their rescue, conservative Republicans are actually the ones interested in defunding the police. And it makes me wonder whether or not that was their line to begin with. And because it was a Republican accusation, it was in fact a confession. But they only want to defund the police that are investigating them. If they can redirect the police to investigate you, more money for them, as far as they're concerned. Anyway, as Trump presses Mike Johnson to defund the special counsel, a leading House Republican dissents. Is Trump's criminality becoming a wedge issue against the GOP? Well, that might be a little overly ambitious, perhaps, to pin this on one member and say there's a wedge issue. But the issue is there, and we'll see whether anybody else cleaves to it. And they got a couple of anonymous, I think, quotes to say, yeah, you know, there's something to that. So you never know. Anyway, Greg, being very optimistic, writes, don't look now, and you shouldn't because you're here. You couldn't look because your ears you have to stay here. But honestly, don't multitask. You'll want to listen to this. Don't look now, but Donald Trump's criminality is slowly morphing into a serious wedge issue against the Republican Party, and Democrats, fortunately, are beginning to act like it. That's good news. I know a lot of people are still complaining that the Democrats don't point out enough that he's a convicted felon, but I think it's actually a parlor game for Democrats everywhere pointing that out. It's just they don't get press for doing it, but I think they do say it. Politico's Playbook, which we read yesterday, reported that Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson privately discussed ways the House can sabotage Special Counsel Jack Smith's ongoing prosecutions of Trump, including attempting to defund his office. That grabbed all the attention, but let's not overlook another key factoid buried in the report. We dug it out, of course. A senior Republican offered a striking dissent from the idea of defunding Smith in a way that will leave a mark. I say we dug it out. We read it. We acknowledged it. I don't know that we paused and said, this is something significant and to take note of. So Greg's doing that for us. I don't think it's a good idea. This is the quote. You'll remember it. I don't think this is a good idea unless you can show that the prosecutors acted in bad faith or fraud or something like that. Representative Mike Simpson, a senior appropriator, told Playbook, speaking about the defund Smith push, he denounced the idea as, quote, stupid, adding of prosecutors, they're just doing their job, even though I disagree with what they did. And Greg uses the old, wait, what? Yes, the wait, what rhetorical device. Wait, what? There it is. Trump's prosecutorial tormentors are not acting in bad faith or being fraudulent. Do tell. I mean, that has been the Republican line all along, right? Simpson apparently thought he was just rebuffing a tough question, but he also badly undermined a core argument of Trump and his propagandists, that the prosecutions of Trump are, they say, wholly illegitimate, exposing the, quote, deep state as irredeemably corrupt to its very core. Now along comes a top Republican who disagrees with the prosecutions of Trump on their interpretation of the law, but appears to allow that the special counsel's office is not abusing its institutional role in a way that merits maximal GOP tactics in response, such as defunding it. Democrats recognize the importance of this moment. Mike Simpson just destroyed MAGA World's argument that Trump's prosecutions on federal charges is fraudulent or in bad faith. Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland emailed me. Like the New York prosecution, it is a bona fide, but bona fide, as we say here in America, and good faith criminal prosecution, and the attempt to defund it, like the effort to delegitimize it, is fundamentally stupid. Other Republicans should follow Simpson and stop demonizing the justice system and the rule of law, Raskin continued. Merrick Garland agrees in a written piece in the Washington Post from the other day, right? Effectively demonstrating how Trump's criming can be used as a wedge going forward. Importantly, this also comes as the Democratic National Committee is going up with new billboards outside of a big conservative gathering that Trump is attending in Michigan this weekend. What? Michigan Republicans are getting together? How many of them? How many people are trying to convene this get together? Anyway, it's the People's Convention, like the People's Court, except this one's a convention. A kind of off-brand RNC hosted by Turning Point Action. Will feature Trump and other reprobates, such as Steve Bannon, who is heading to prison after defying a January 6th committee subpoena, and Roger Stone, whose sentence was commuted by Trump. Per a DNC source, the billboards will feature pictures of Trump, Bannon, and Stone, and read, "Trump and his fellow crooks are in Detroit asking for your vote. But it's just a scam. They don't care about you. They're just out for themselves." I mean, not the most impactful billboard I've ever read the text of, but perhaps visually it's more striking. I don't know. I mean, it delivers the correct message. I just can't imagine walking to work and seeing this billboard and saying, "Oh my God, I'm moved to action." But I already know the story. Democrats increasingly grasp that Trump's criminal conviction in his Manhattan hush money trial and his ongoing federal prosecutions for stealing state secrets, and trying to overthrow democracy, put Republicans in a hideously difficult position. Trump is demanding that Republicans show absolute allegiance to him over the rule of law and urging them to do everything in their power to place him above it. This predicament is starkly illustrated by Trump's latest moves. As the Politico report notes, Trump urged Johnson to act, and the House Speaker could only meekly agree that this would be merited. Gop leaders are whipping votes for a measure to allow presidents to move charges against him from state to federal court, but who cares? And Johnson is conferring with other top Republicans about ways to defund Smith's office. What's telling is that vulnerable House Republicans are balking privately. As Politico reports, due in part to skittish swing district members, the Speaker is already finding it difficult to deliver for Trump. Indeed, in another sign that Trump's criminality is becoming a wedge, some Republicans representing swing districts are decidedly uninterested in commenting on Trump's felony convictions. True, some vulnerable Republicans rushed to embrace Trump after the verdict, but that strongly suggests they've calculated that alienating MAGA voters is such a danger that they will accept the risk of irking moderates and independents. What's more, it's clear that this dynamic will only get worse for them, as Trump's pressure on Johnson indicates he expects the Gop to produce results, which is a little dumb of him. That could mean tough votes in the future, say on measures to move state prosecutions or to somehow target Smith's prosecutions. All right, let's wind it up here, Greg. Republicans are feigning swagger about the politics of the convictions favoring them, but this is likely just spin that they themselves don't even believe. In fact, Trump's big visit to Capitol Hill on Thursday, where he reportedly attacked the Justice Department as, quote, dirty bastards, shows that he is trying to prevail on Republicans to act as if the politics of his criminality favor them, to cow Republicans who might be tempted to defect. The visit was supposed to show the world that the party is united behind him in spite of his criminality, or perhaps because of it. Either way, majorities of voters agree with Trump's convictions and believe he has committed serious federal crimes. So, those will be bad votes for those marginal Gop incumbents, and Trump will keep demanding more of them. Most Democrats now appear to see things this way after an early bout of skittishness. In addition to the DNC billboards, the Biden campaign just launched new ads in the swing states, slamming Trump over his insurrection, for which he's currently being prosecuted. The spots feature brutal footage of the violence that Trump incited, and they hit Trump for pledging to pardon the rioters, dramatizing that a second Trump term would be a thoroughly lawless one. Democrats seem to recognize an opening to hit Republicans for placing Trump's criminal defense needs before their duty to the country and their sense of obligation to their own constituents. In coming out against defunding Smith, Mike Simpson blurted out the position that many vulnerable Republicans would surely like to adopt, if only in service to political self-preservation. The problem is that Donald Trump will not let them. So I think that's probably a good summary of it, and hit a few of the points that perhaps needed polishing along the way, although a lot of it was quite obvious to us as we were reading. Speaking of which, did I even put this away? I just happened to see, I guess one of the things that Trump floated as policy, to the limited extent that he did anything that actually was policy. Like we said, most of it was a gripe session, and the Republicans loved it. He floated this idea of, essentially eliminating income taxes, federal income taxes in this country, and instead funding the government through tariffs on imports, like entirely, which is astonishing and stupid, but, that's Trump for you. But as others were pointing out, I mean, if you actually stopped and analyzed the thing, I think it's sort of inherently stupid, and you can see it. You don't even really have to know why. But if you stopped and did the economics of it, of course, somebody laid out we take in about $2 trillion in revenues through income tax, whereas we import something like $3.5 to $4 trillion worth of merchandise each year. And if we were to impose tariffs on it in order to replace the income tax, you'd basically be putting a 50+% tariff on all imported goods. And of course, that would be a hugely regressive tax. And the nation's wealthiest people would, of course, go tax-free on all of their income, passive and otherwise. And in the meantime, everybody would be paying 50% more for everything. And it would be ruinous and just utterly destroy the American economy. But what the hell? These are the sorts of things that's tax policy and tariff policy and trade policy from a guy who says, well, bleach kills COVID and we're worried, so drink bleach. We're worried about people having it. They should breathe it in. If it's in their lungs, get some bleach in there. Perhaps light can kill it. We should put light somehow inside the body. And another thing, I'm very smart. My uncle once taught at MIT. So, he actually taught there for quite some time, but that doesn't make any difference. Anyway, apparently that was his policy pronouncement, and maybe the only one as far as I can tell, but we'll see whether there are any others that come to light. There's an entertaining bit that we can perhaps squeeze in before the break. I was wondering about something like this. Now that Trump is a convicted felon, and we like to remind everybody of that as frequently as possible. I was wondering whether there were any weird repercussions, like what sorts of things in various states where he resides or might visit are convicted felons, prohibited from doing that might actually get in the way of his lifestyle. I did see somebody point out, guns, for instance, and he's something of a gun enthusiast himself and probably owns quite a few, it is said, although his son Don Jr. is the bigger gun enthusiast and bigger gun owner and user. And Trump, of course, I don't know whether he ever carried a gun, but he just has people who carry guns around him probably. And of course, now as a former president, that's certainly the case. So I don't know how much impact that really has on him. Although, if he has guns that belong to him, I guess you could possibly leverage that and search his place and seize them. But he would probably just claim they belong to Don Jr. But there have to be other things, right? And there are. And leave it to Forbes magazine to remember what they might be. This is a good point. He owns not so much in the way of casinos anymore these days, but certainly still the golf clubs. And a central feature of the golf clubs, of course, the little holes in the ground where you put the ball into. That's a big deal. Grass is huge there. Sand probably comes next. But the big attraction at the end of the round of golf, and for some people right in the middle of the round of golf, is being able to head in for a drink or two at the bar. The 19th hole, as they call it. Most people are just there for some sandwiches, maybe a beer here and there. But you got to have a liquor license to run a proper golf resort these days. And guess who's not supposed to have liquor licenses? That's right. Convicted felons. That's something. So Forbes points that one out. Liquor license loophole or another Trump tall tale is the question they put in the headline. Here's what's going on. The state of New Jersey disclosed recently that its Division of Alcoholic Beverage Control, the ABC, is reviewing if Donald Trump's convictions last month on 34 counts of business fraud violate a law barring convicted felons from holding liquor licenses. Forbes, they brag, was the first to cover the state's review of the liquor licenses at the former president's 3 New Jersey golf clubs. There are 3. The next day, spokespeople for the former president claimed that Trump had nothing to do with the licenses at the 3 clubs. President Trump is not the holder of any liquor license in New Jersey, and he's not an officer or director of any entity that holds a liquor license in New Jersey, or anywhere in the United States for that matter, according to a statement from a spokesperson of the Trump Organization provided to media outlets. But, there's reason to doubt. That might be true, but always check the paperwork with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the sole owner of the 3 clubs in New Jersey that are under review. The names of businesses listed on the liquor license are all owned by a revocable trust, which Trump is the sole beneficiary. I mean, it's trickery. I don't own it. Trump liquor license that's totally not me, LLC, owns it, you see? Good trick. Well, we'll see whether that holds up. And hey, what about that hotel in Las Vegas? He still's got one there, doesn't he? Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. Okay, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. A little trouble with the mute button. But, all right, now I've got my focus back on it. Let's go back and see what Forbes has to say about those liquor licenses and get to the nitty-gritty details, because everyone loves gritty details. I don't know so much about the nitty ones, but the gritty ones are usually pretty attractive. Anyway, let's see. So he was playing the Shell Corporation game here. The idea of the liquor licenses are owned by some other entity, which is not me, but that entity is organized such that the sole beneficiary of that organization is me, and that should probably be enough for most courts. Let's use Trump's National Golf Course in Bedminster as an example. According to a report on the State Attorney General's website, which a spokesperson for the agency referenced last week, when asked for current information on liquor licenses, the licensee is Lamington Farm Club, LLC. Well, now, wait a minute. How was that Trump? Well, a personal financial disclosure that Trump filed with the federal government in 2023 as part of his presidential campaign lists, you'll never guess, Lamington Farm Club LLC's underlying asset as a golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. I wonder why Lamington Farm Club LLC is permitting Donald Trump to use their land to bury the body of Ivana Trump. I'm not certain why they would do that, because they're so separate as entities. He has nothing to do with that. That same document, of course, discloses that Lamington Farm Club LLC is completely owned by another company, LFB Acquisition LLC. After that, it actually starts to get even more convoluted. But again, all paths lead to Trump. In case you were wondering where we're going with this, Donald Trump is at the bottom of all of it. 2 different companies own LFB Acquisition LLC. Remember our path here. The liquor license for the Bedminster Golf Club is owned by Lamington Farm Club LLC. Lamington Farm Club's underlying asset is the golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey itself. Lamington Farm Club is completely owned by another company called LFB Acquisition LLC. 2 different companies own LFB Acquisition LLC. How do you like that? Now, 1% of it is owned by LFB Acquisition Member Corporation, and 99% of it is held by, I don't know if this is code. See if you can figure this one out. This is like those coding flags. Martha Analito could read this if we were doing semaphore or raising naval flags. But anyway, 99% of LFB Acquisition LLC is held by DJT Holdings LLC. Can't figure out exactly who that is, but maybe we can get to the bottom of it. DJT. 99% of DJT Holdings is owned by some other entity. What is the entity? This one's easier to figure out. The Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust. The remaining 1% of that is owned by DJT Holdings Manager Member LLC, a company that is also, you'll never believe it, completely owned by the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust. That's interesting there. So DJT Holdings is owned 99% by the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust. 1% is owned by DJT Holdings Manager Member LLC. DJT Manager Holdings Managing Member LLC is also completely owned by the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust. So, that one's even easier to figure out. At bottom, DJT Holdings is 100% owned and controlled by Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust. DJT Holdings, of course, owns 99% of LFB Acquisitions, and it is LFB Acquisitions that wholly owns Lamington Farm Club, which holds the liquor license. Donald Trump holds the liquor license at Bedminster. You knew that going in. He tells everybody it's his club. LFB Acquisition Member Corp. 2 is completely owned by DJT Holdings Managing Member LLC, which, as explained above, is also owned by the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust. They make a nice little chart here. I mean, it's not that nice because there's just a lot of boxes on it, but come on. Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster is 100% owned by Lamington Farm Club, which is 100% owned by LFB Acquisition, which is 99% owned by DJT Holdings LLC, which is 99% owned by the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust, which is, of course, 100% to the 100% of the benefit flows to Donald J. Trump himself. It's his revocable trust. So, through 4 different companies, the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust owns 100% of Lamington Farm Club LLC, the liquor licensee for Trump's golf course in Bedminster. The Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust exists for the exclusive benefit of the former president, according to sworn testimony. Both he and Donald Trump Jr. gave to the New York Attorney General's office in November of 2023. Trump also said at the time that he was the sole provider of the assets that went into the trust, which he formed around the time that he was elected president. I guess that's supposed to be his blind trust. The liquor licenses for Trump's 2 other golf clubs in New Jersey, as well as for golf clubs, restaurants, a hotel, a resort, a private club, a bar and winery in California, Florida, Illinois, New York, North Carolina, and Virginia, they all follow similar ownership structure. Named on the license are companies that, through a chain of other companies, are entirely owned by a trust of which Donald Trump is the sole beneficiary. New Jersey law prohibits people convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude. That's right. Moral turpitude is involved here. This is turpitudinous behavior, as we now know. This is the form that it takes. So, New Jersey law prohibits people convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude of having any interest in an ABC licensee. Oh no. A state handbook explains that those sorts of crimes usually involve dishonesty, fraud, or depravity. And I think in the case of Donald Trump, you have all of them rolled up into one. I don't know whether, well, I guess there's a little bit of depravity rolled into the 34 convictions here. Remember, there was the Stormy Daniels issue. So I don't know. I guess you could make the case that there's depravity there, but there's certainly dishonesty and fraud. Anyway, it's supposed to, a state handbook explaining moral turpitude says that crimes that involve dishonesty, fraud, or depravity severe enough to typically be punished by more than a year in prison are the sorts of things they're thinking of. Not that he would serve it, but it could be punishable that way. That's all that really matters. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office earlier referred Forbes to applicable language regarding being a reputable person from the ABC's bulletins and case law that states a person must have a reputable character and would be expected to operate the licensed business in a reputable manner. This discretionary concept acknowledges the issuing agency's authority to consider a reasonable belief that the applicant is fronting as a licensee for some other undisclosed and unusually, or rather usually, disqualified person. Or I guess in the case of Donald Trump, unusually disqualified. When assessing, that is the test here, you can decide whether somebody's fronting from someone else when assessing whether to issue a new license or a license renewal application. Spokespeople for the Trump Organization and his campaign did not respond to Forbes' requests for comment regarding the golf club's ownership structures. A company spokesperson, though, did make this comment earlier to other outlets. These are some of the most iconic properties in the world. That does sound like the Trump Organization. Really? Bedminster, New Jersey. One of the most iconic properties in the world. It's got corpses buried in it, and the grass is mowed by goats. Anyway, reports like this do nothing but harm the thousands of hardworking Americans who derive their livelihoods from these spectacular assets. A spokesperson for the Attorney General said they did not have any updates to provide regarding the office's inquiry. So, it's a good line of inquiry. I like it. Credit to Forbes for doing it, and it would be a fantastic thing to see the liquor licenses revoked. A better thing, of course, would be for Trump to fall down a flight of 1,000 stairs and then be buried at the bottom of the ocean with Osama bin Laden. But I would take, in the interim, the revocation of the liquor licenses just because it would be funny. I mean, people will still go there and play golf. And then, of course, you'd find people going there taking selfies of them playing golf, drinking, like non-alcoholic beer and like saying, come and get me, cops, or something like that. I got no idea. But, the point is he would be making less money and he would be embarrassed and everybody would point at him and say, turpitudinous. And that's really a win if we can get people to say that word. All right. Let's see. Other things to share with you. There's more news. God damn it. There's more about Clarence Thomas. I saw the article and I didn't put it aside. Quite honestly, I was like, I'm getting tired of it. I mean, I welcome all revelations about Thomas. They're all very interesting. Yesterday is about his great nephew who he was raising as a son, who's now sitting in jail in South Carolina facing 25 years. I think, was it 25 years to life or just 25 years for gun and and drug charges, and letting everybody know that, yeah, by the way, when I became a teenager, they no longer were interested in me. They needed a prop, I guess, as he was, in the public eye for the first time in the first couple of years of his term in service. I needed to be used as a prop to show that he had a family. Then when raising me got difficult, like, i.e., I became a teenager, he shipped me off to boarding school. And by the way, I didn't turn out so great. And also, in case you were wondering, Republicans just spent the last year and a half saying that the worst thing that anybody could do as a relative of a federal public figure was to be involved in gun and drug related charges, like, Hunter Biden. Whereas this guy, I don't know, I never heard of him before. No idea who he is. Anyway, there was more news about Clarence Thomas taking yet still more trips paid for by billionaires that still didn't disclose, even after like 9 rounds. He's like Jared Kushner of Supreme Court disclosure. Oops, I made a mistake by excluding these several, incriminating items. But now I've disclosed everything. It's all out on the table. Oh, there's more? Oh, well, I'll amend my report. Okay. I just, it was an oversight. Oh, there's more? Oh, okay. Well, I'll be right with you. 2 weeks. Well, anyway, I guess that's happening now. That's the news story with Clarence Thomas. And I guess the original source of this information is actually in case you were wondering what Dick Durbin was up to, it was a Senate Judiciary Committee release, I think, that sparked this headline. I happened to grab the Balls and Strikes, I don't know, is it a Substack type newsletter from, this one is written by Madiba K. Denny, Dennie, who writes at Balls and Strikes. There's a time bomb. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong one. Okay. There's a totally different story. I was wondering why. I thought it was written by somebody else I had in mind. But this is something else about yesterday's Mifepristone decision, which maybe we'll get to. But I also have a couple of recorded segments that, one thing, they'll give me a break here. And two, we like to get those segments on the air as soon as possible. I guess I was looking at Thomas's picture and clicked on that. But no, what I really need here is Jamie Dupree's Substack, which is in fact the Substack, Regular Order by Jamie Dupree, who writes, more free trips for Thomas revealed. Trump rallies Republicans. Also, this is news about his appearance in Capitol Hill. Trump also rallies Republicans in a whirlwind visit. So it's a generalized roundup. But I grabbed it for the headline and also for its link to its source about Thomas. There's Thomas Trips. He's going to summarize things for us here. 1 week ago, Clarence Thomas acknowledged that he had failed to include several free vacation trips on his official gifts disclosure form. Now, Senate Democrats have released documents showing that Thomas took several more trips, paid for by conservative billionaire Harlan Crow, which also weren't publicly reported. More trips? Yes. The new information came as a result of a subpoena sent to Crow for information about travel and gifts that he had provided to Justice Thomas. The items not included by Thomas on his gift disclosure included, 5 different bullet points here. It's amazing that they didn't take the opportunity to get together and coordinate their story. But of course, that too would have been illegal for them to do, I think, ultimately. But, well, maybe now that since they're not charged, it might have been okay for them to do. So, I don't know, but I thought they would try and work something out regardless, even if it was outright illegal. It's the sort of thing that people facing scrutiny like this will often do. But they didn't. Well, I don't know. Or maybe they didn't do it because he's like, look, I'm operating with impunity here. There's nothing they can do until they can get the votes to impeach me, and that's never going to happen. So you tell your story any way you want to, man. It's all right with me. And also, I'm sure he's in no their relationship is such that Thomas probably doesn't feel like he can issue orders or directions to Crow. And then, of course, Crow could say, well, I mean, for my sake, I also want to be on the same page as you. And this is a legal issue. Maybe I should take some advice from a member of the Supreme Court of the United States on legal issues. And then he remembered, oh yeah, it's Clarence Thomas. He doesn't really actually know anything about this. So what the hell? We'll just wing it. And this is the result. There is information. And remember, once again, I'll point this out. Everyone's been down on Dick Durbin, but this information comes to light by virtue of having issued a subpoena to Harlan Crow, which, he may ignore its demands that he come and testify, but he did turn over this information, including a May 2017 private jet flight from St. Louis to Kalispell. Is that right? Kalispell, Montana. Then, of course, another jet flight back, this time from Kalispell to Dallas. I don't know what he was doing in Dallas. I don't know what he was doing in St. Louis, for that matter. But apparently he wanted to go back and forth to Montana via, first St. Louis and then Dallas. And then in March 2019, 2 years later almost, private jet from Washington, D.C. to Savannah, Georgia, round trip, that one. And then a June 2021 private jet from D.C. to San Jose, California, round trip. And then a last bullet point here that says there were also questions about details of a free trip to Indonesia. That's exotic. Let's hear more about that. The Dems, for their part, are saying things like, as Congressman Bill Pascrell of New Jersey said, Clarence Thomas is corrupt as hell. That's about right. This as the news brought immediate calls by Democrats for his resignation. Justice Thomas has been corrupted by Harlan Crow, added Representative Mikey Sherrill of New Jersey. I guess they found some people, the New Jersey delegation, going to lunch. But they were accompanied, I guess, by Jerry Connolly of Virginia, who was there to say, the next trip Justice Thomas takes should be into retirement. But now, a couple of other bullet points here. Quickly, Jamie Dupree rounds up. Ethics. I'm going to keep repeating myself because I think this is extraordinarily important. The 9 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court have by far the weakest ethics standards of anyone in the federal government. No member of Congress or executive branch could accept this level of trips and gifts, but the justices can, and evidently do. As for the Gop, the knee-jerk Republican reaction to every story, gift and travel story about Justice Thomas and Alito, by the way, is to accuse the press and the Democrats of demonizing them. But there is a reason these stories have produced outrage, because the details deserve more attention from Congress. Yeah, well, that's true. Then he moves on to other subjects, including yesterday's mifepristone ruling, Trump's meeting with his Republicans, and I guess discussion of what happened there. Oh, right. Then the floating of, this is good. I was looking for a source of the information I told you about his tariff proposal, and this references it here, so we can use this can serve double duty here. The idea he floated yesterday, raising tariffs on imports as a way to pay for future income tax cuts, or as he floated, the elimination of income taxes. To help you understand, Jamie Dupree says, let's dive into the Treasury Department's fiscal report for the month of May, which goes into specific details about how much money the U.S. brings in from tariffs and from individual income taxes. You will see quickly how the two don't compare to one another. In May alone, May of 2024, tariffs and customs collected amounted to about $5.2 billion. This paints an even worse picture here, by the way. Individual income taxes collected in May of 2024, maybe it's unfair because it was just tax season and maybe late filers are pouring in checks, but $5.2 billion in tariffs collected in May, $129.6 billion in income taxes collected in May. So total tariffs so far in fiscal year 2024, $49 billion. Total tariffs or individual income taxes collected so far, $1.7 trillion. So, yeah, I really want to see someone proposing raising over $2 trillion in tariffs in 1 year. The details would be very unpopular. I think he's probably right about that one. Okay, there's lots here. This is a hell of a roundup, but we're not going to read it all. But we'll use it for for those purposes, I think we've done what we needed to do with it. All right, let's jump back out and remind everybody also, we got our break coming up. And you know what? Now may be a good time for me to roll one of the shorter items here. Oh, I might have to, let me see if I got all three of my submitted items handy here. Might be able to roll one of the shorter items in order to get that done. Yeah, let's see if we can plug in a Rosalind McGregor piece that I've got that runs a couple of minutes, and I got another submission. It's been some time since we got one from Darwin, and so we do have one. It's a little longer, and I'm going to have to save it for a wider open segment. But what if I drop this bit of news into Soundboard and burn a couple of minutes on one of two new segments submitted from Rosalind McGregor? Here's one.
Good morning, David.
Good morning.
You like to say everyone needs to check their paperwork. Today's story is about what happens when you don't.
Ooh.
The Michigan Board of State Canvassers recently disqualified several congressional candidates from the August primary ballot, citing formatting errors on nominating petitions and, in some instances, signature fraud. In a series of unanimous votes, the bipartisan board booted candidates like Nasser Bayroun, a Democrat running to fill Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat, Nikki Snyder, a Republican who was running for the U.S. House in Michigan's 8th Congressional District. They were among 8 congressional hopefuls removed from the August 6th primary ballot after canvassers agreed with the State Bureau of Elections staff, who uncovered nominating petition issues ranging from improper typefaces to more significant issues like evident signature fraud. Board Chair Mary Ellen Gerwitz, a Democrat, told reporters following the meeting she believed canvassers may need to start personally and closely examining any instance of fraud or suspected fraud that isn't covered by people who are examining the petitions. The disqualifications mark the second major election cycle in a row in which Michigan canvassers denied ballot access to multiple candidates in high-profile races. In 2022, evidence of a massive forgery scheme led canvassers to boot 5 Republican gubernatorial candidates. Other candidates disqualified Friday were J.D. Wilson, a Republican running in Michigan's 1st Congressional District, who had formatting issues with his nominating petitions, Rhonda Powell, a Democrat running in Michigan's 10th Congressional District, who did not submit enough signatures ahead of the filing deadline, Stephen Elliott, a Republican running in Michigan's 12th Congressional District, who the Bureau said submitted 71 petition sheets showing clear indications of fraud, Ryan Foster, a Democrat running in Michigan's 12th Congressional District, who was found to be just shy of the signature threshold, and Hassam Nemi, a Republican running in Michigan's 12th Congressional District, who had several improperly dated petitions, and Anil Kumar, a Democrat running in Michigan's 10th Congressional District, who the Bureau said submitted at least 47 sheets showing clear indications of fraud and dubious authenticity. Candidates for the U.S. House need 1,000 valid voter signatures to make the ballot, while candidates for the U.S. Senate need 15,000. Nikki Snyder, the 8th Congressional District candidate, had initially filed to run for U.S. Senate, but in March changed her focus to the U.S. House. The Bureau of Elections determined 980 of the 1,079 signatures she filed were valid, dropping her below the threshold required to make the ballot. Among those surviving signature challenges were Curtis Hertel, the lone Democrat running against Republican Tom Barrett in Michigan's 7th Congressional District, and U.S. Rep. Alyssa Slotkin, the Democratic frontrunner for the U.S. Senate seat. Remember, candidates, check those nominating petitions carefully. Back to you, David.
Yes, always check the paperwork, especially if you're dealing with Trump. But I guess he's passed that attribute on to many in the Republican Party. It's amazing, and also amazing how frequently you'll find that people who screw up those nominating petitions or just commit outright fraud on their nominating petitions are about to or attempting to run on a platform of combating voter fraud. That is to say, if you're doing it, we want to get rid of it. If I'm doing it, it's awesome, which is, by the way, the Republican position on pretty much everything, including whether or not they will vote for convicted felons or whether or not there should be immunity for former presidents. Only for Trump. That's actually something that Philip Bump is writing about and circulating right now. And I don't think I wasn't even really thinking of scheduling that for a reading. But, it's Friday. You could take a look at it, over the weekend. We got plenty already on the docket here, but he does write today on immunity too. Republicans grant Trump a different standard. Most Republicans oppose broad immunity for presidents, except Trump. They wouldn't vote for someone convicted of a felony until Trump, and on it goes. And now you get the idea of what the content of a piece like that is going to be. I don't actually have to read it to you, but I'm sure it would be entertaining and interesting if we did. But we'll just let that be a thought experiment for you for the rest of the day, because there's other things to get to, and we're coming up on our second break at the top of the hour, and probably no room to fit anything else in. Although I did mention, and maybe we'll start this one and finish on the other side, I started to accidentally read the Substack style entry in Balls and Strikes by Madiba Denny, and the headline I got part of the way through: there's a time bomb hidden in the Supreme Court's abortion pills decision. Not that many people really super thrilled with the mifepristone decision yesterday, mostly because even though it did slap down a purported injunction against distribution of the pill issued by Matthew Kaczmarek, of course, it did so really by doing the bare minimum necessary. This case should never have been allowed in the first place. And they said as much in the Supreme Court decision, a unanimous decision that the plaintiffs lacked standing right from the beginning. But again, it doesn't do much to advance the ball. It just says, take this stupid case and go away. You've done this one improperly. But it leaves the door open for doing it properly and coming straight back with more or less the same ruling, except this time, okay, we found a plaintiff who can be said to have standing. Now, what do you make of one judge in one single judge division somewhere in North Texas setting abortion policy for the entire country based on a made-up complaint? All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, yes, I mentioned also that this is one of two pieces that I've got that are good follow-ups to yesterday's decision. Let's see if we can't run through them and get you caught up for the weekend. Again, this is Madiba Denny in Balls and Strikes. There's a time bomb hidden in the Supreme Court's abortion pills decision. The subheader sums it up. The justices turned away a cartoonishly dumb legal theory, but also laid the groundwork to further the goals of the conservative legal movement in the future. This must be the time bomb. On Thursday morning, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in FDA versus Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, that kicked the conservative legal movement's latest attack on abortion out of court. Writing for a unanimous court, Justice Brett Kavanaugh explained that the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, a sock puppet group of right-wing creeps challenging the FDA's approval of mifepristone, 25 years after it was approved, of course, lacks standing, the legal right to bring a lawsuit in the first place. Generally speaking, a plaintiff has standing if they experienced an injury that was caused by the defendant and that the court can fix. Here, AHM advanced a legal theory that was too far-fetched even for the court's radical right-wing supermajority, although notably accepted by both a Trump district court judge and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is not supposed to fall prey to that kind of stupidity. Because of the court's ruling, the disgraceful status quo it imposed in Dobbs remains in place. Mifepristone remains available in states where it's not already banned. Abortion access is no less limited, but for once, no more limited than it was yesterday. At issue in Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine is mifepristone, a safe and effective pill that the Food and Drug Administration approved 2 decades ago for use in ending pregnancies. As of 2023, medication like mifepristone is used in over 60% of abortions in the United States. Nevertheless, 4 anti-abortion groups commenced a lawsuit in 2022, strategically filed in the courtroom of noted culture warrior Matt Kaczmarek. Crucially, the doctors involved do not prescribe mifepristone to their patients, and the FDA's regulations do not require them to do anything or to stop them from doing anything. In short, they could have just minded their business. Yet they allege that they were injured by the FDA's regulations because they personally don't like abortion and might, hypothetically, have to care for a patient who uses mifepristone in the future. Boy, is that outrageously dumb. In federal district court, Kaczmarek agreed that the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine had valid claims to make. So too did Judge James Ho of the Fifth Circuit. I think this is how he became infamous to us, who in a partial concurrence argued that, quote, doctors delight in working with their unborn patients and experience an aesthetic injury when they are aborted. I love babies so much. I heard one got aborted. That's all that there is going on here. Not my patient, no one I know, just generally in the concept causes me aesthetic injury. I would imagine that it's not just the concept of unborn babies are faultless, blameless. How dare we, condemn them? Because that actually has greater substance than what he was saying. Aesthetic injury. I like babies. I like looking at babies. I love when they coo and giggle. It brings me joy. And I heard just the other day that one of them somewhere, I don't know the parents, I don't even know what state they live in, they aborted their baby. Now I'll never get to see that baby coo and smile. Well, you were never going to get to see that baby coo and smile anyway. You live in Texas and these parents live in Maine. You weren't going to, I heard there was a baby born. I better get on a plane and go to, you're never going to see this baby. But theoretically I could. You know what? That's enough for me. I'm Matthew Kaczmarek and I approve this message. By this reasoning, doctors should be able to force someone to give birth if they think looking at ultrasounds is really neat. Okay. You could just ask AI, give me an ultrasound. Show me a picture of an ultrasound and give it Donald Trump's face, let's say. That'll really bring me joy. You could just do that. I mean, it burns up all the water, but anyway. The court disposed of this notion in short order. But again, a reminder, this is the Supreme Court of the United States we had to ask to do this because no federal judge in between these idiots and the Supreme Court of the United States was willing to say, no, get out of here. You're an idiot. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. 4 judges said yes to it. 1 in the district court and a panel of 3 on the Fifth Circuit. And they may even have reviewed some other stuff along the way on banc. I'm not sure. But anyway, when they finally got it to the Supreme Court, astonishingly enough, all 9 of them were like, this is too dumb. I can't believe you brought this here. But how long did it take them to say that and write that down and issue it as a decision? Months to get to the point where they decide this is so dumb, it should never have seen the light of day, even in Kaczmarek's courtroom. Months of uncertainty. And there's more. The court disposed of this notion in short order. A plaintiff's desire to make a drug less available for others does not establish standing to sue. He actually took the serious part of this. Kavanaugh wrote, this is a relief, but it's not an outright win for pregnant people and their loved ones. The fact that the court even needed to clarify something this obvious is a testament to how entrenched conservative extremism is in the federal judiciary, and especially in the Fifth Circuit, where anti-choice activists are already hard at work coming up with a different attack on mifepristone that the court's conservatives might find a little less specious. Distressingly, the opinion leaves breadcrumbs for these activists to follow next time and sets up some roadblocks to keep progressive activists out, for example. Kavanaugh writes that plaintiffs who aren't actually affected by a given regulation, like the AHM, can still thread the causation needle if they show that the parties who are regulated will likely react in predictable ways that in turn will likely injure the plaintiff. The court also clarified that an organization does not have standing merely if it diverts its resources in response to a defendant's actions. Why does this matter? The diversion of resources argument comes from a landmark 1982 case called Havens Realty Corporation versus Coleman, in which a fair housing organization sought to sue an apartment complex for its refusal to rent apartments to black testers, people who posed as potential renters to test compliance with the law. The court ruled in Havens Realty that the organization, although it wasn't actually trying to rent apartments, nonetheless had standing to sue, in part because the realty company's actions forced the organization to use its limited resources to ferret out illegal discrimination. Kavanaugh's opinion declines to extend standing to the AHM under Havens Realty, but he also goes out of his way to call Havens Realty an unusual case that the court has been careful not to extend beyond its context. If this language signals that the court is looking skeptically at future diversion of resources claims, that could be bad news for civil rights groups trying to use the courts to enforce the law. In a solo concurrence, Justice Clarence Thomas comes out and says, I just flew in from Kalispell and boy, are Harlan Crow's arms tired. Clarence Thomas comes out and says what Kavanaugh does not. In his separate opinion, Thomas takes direct aim at associational standing, the legal theory that allows organizations to sue for injuries suffered by its members. Our associational standing doctrine appears to create serious problems, both constitutional and otherwise, he wrote, criticizing the court having never attempted to reconcile the doctrine with the traditional understanding of the judicial power. Associational standing originates from NAACP versus Alabama, ex rel Patterson, a 1958 Supreme Court case in which the NAACP sued to prevent the disclosure of its member rolls to state officials. That was rather insidious, I bet, which would have put their safety at risk in the Jim Crow South. In a unanimous opinion, the court sided with the NAACP, an outcome that avoided forcing individual black plaintiffs in mid-1950s Alabama to sue in their own names in order to vindicate their rights. In the years since, many civil rights groups have used associational standing to bring cases on matters that affect their members' interests. Environmental organizations, for example, depend on associational standing to enforce the Endangered Species Act, or to challenge development proposals that will wreak havoc on the surrounding environment. Okay. Doctors have used associational standing, that's more relevant to this case, to sue on behalf of their patients whose rights are infringed when state laws deny them abortion care. Again, an especially important tool in cases where individual plaintiffs might reasonably fear harassment or violence. Thomas is careful to note that he's writing with an eye toward the future. In an inappropriate case, he says, we should just, inappropriate. He meant an appropriate case. He said it. I don't know why I put inappropriate. I guess because I was thinking about Clarence Thomas, and everything he does is inappropriate. So in an appropriate case, though, he says, we should explain how the Constitution permits associational standing. But this is how the conservative legal movement works. Even when the outcome is, relative to the alternative, good, the conservative justices find a way to set the conservative legal movement up for future success. This time bomb didn't go off this time, but the clock is ticking. All right. There was also review of the case from Dahlia Lithwick and Mark Joseph Stern in Slate. At least to give you the openers in this one. The headline, the Supreme Court's abortion pill ruling should satisfy nobody. Partly for some of these same reasons and maybe some other ones. But as they put it on Thursday, the Supreme Court did the bare minimum necessary to operate like an actual court of law, unanimously throwing out an absurd and dangerous lawsuit against medication abortion The justices do not deserve extra credit for refusing to embrace this deeply unserious litigation, and they should earn no gold stars for maintaining the legal status quo on abortion pills. They merely acted as minimally responsible adults in a room of sugared-up preschoolers, shutting down the lower court's lawless rampage over all known rules of standing in desperate pursuit of an anti-abortion agenda. It is chilling to the bone that activists, lawyers, and judges were able to wreak as much havoc as they did before SCOTUS put them in timeout. And this bad joke of a case isn't even over. That's a good point. A lower court has already teed up a do-over that could once again jeopardize access to reproductive care in all 50 states. Don't call this decision a victory. It is at best a reprieve, an election year performance of Supreme Court unanimity and sobriety that masks the damage the conservative supermajority has already inflicted, as well as the threats to reproductive freedom that lie ahead. The ruling grew out of arguably the most obscene case of judge shopping in recent memory. A far-right Christian nationalist law firm called the Alliance Defending Freedom brought together a group of anti-abortion doctors and dentists in 2022. Dentists, what? To serve as plaintiffs in a lawsuit against mifepristone. FDA, of course, had approved it as part of a 2-part regimen that ends pregnancy back in 2000. So again, coming up on a quarter century. The plaintiffs argued falsely that the drug is extraordinarily dangerous to women and girls, sends countless patients to the hospital with life-threatening conditions, and should never have been approved. The ADF called the phony association of the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine and incorporated it in Amarillo, Texas. Why Amarillo? Because one judge, just one judge, sits in the federal courthouse there, Matthew Kaczmarek, who worked as an anti-abortion activist before former President Donald Trump appointed him to the bench. Kaczmarek and his colleagues have rigged the rules to ensure that any case filed in Amarillo gets sent to him, a departure from the standard procedures of random assignment. Predictably, Kaczmarek gave the plaintiffs a total victory in 2023, declaring the FDA's approval of mifepristone unlawful and ordering it off the market nationwide for everyone. There are far too many problems with his decision on the merits to enumerate here. Most egregiously, Kaczmarek ignored more than 100 scientific studies demonstrating that mifepristone is safe and effective, citing instead 2, quote, studies based on anonymous blog posts compiled by anti-abortion advocates. Both studies, by the way, were later retracted, but there was always an even more foundational problem with Kaczmarek's ruling. He held that the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine had standing to sue, even though it could not demonstrate any remotely plausible injury to its members. Nevertheless, the increasingly rogue U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit agreed with his analysis, first in April of 2023, and again 4 months later, even after the SCOTUS prodded it to reconsider. It didn't go as far as Kaczmarek had, but the Fifth Circuit did impose draconian nationwide restrictions on mifepristone, making it difficult, if not impossible, to access throughout the country. Now, the Supreme Court has unanimously shot down the Fifth Circuit and Kaczmarek, an embarrassing rejoinder to those lower courts' law-free militancy. Brett Kavanaugh's unanimous majority opinion methodically dismantles the plaintiff's theory of standing, dismisses it as complicated, speculative, unprecedented, and limitless. Standing requires a direct link between the plaintiff's alleged injury and the action they are challenging. As Kavanaugh points out, the plaintiff cannot establish any such link. These doctors and dentists have no obligation, of course, to prescribe mifepristone. Rather, they lay out a series of hypotheticals. 1, a different doctor prescribes mifepristone to their patient. And 2, that patient will suffer complications. And 3, she will find her way to the plaintiff's practice. And then 4, the plaintiff will have to treat her, potentially assisting in an abortion or post-abortion care treatment that violates their conscience. This link, though, is simply far too speculative or too attenuated to support standing, Kavanaugh concludes. One big reason why, Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, How do we pronounce her name? Gosh, I should figure that out. Avowed in her briefing, and again an oral argument, that the federal conscience protections guarantee all doctors an absolute right to refuse the provision of any treatment they morally oppose. Already granted you that one. So, Kavanaugh wrote, the plaintiffs have not shown that they could be forced to participate in an abortion or even providing abortion-related medical treatment over their conscience objections because existing law definitively protects their right to refusal. That's true even in a healthcare desert where other doctors are not readily available. A doctor who opposes abortion, the court affirmed, may stand by and watch a patient bleed out rather than treat her in contraventions of his conscience. Ironically, then, an anti-abortion statute that protects anti-abortion doctors played a key role in defeating the plaintiff's claim. Their own lavish safeguards against terminating a pregnancy, or even just treating a patient who already terminated a pregnancy, helped defeat their attempt to pull mifepristone off the market. It's kind of ironic. The threats to the medication, however, are far from over. First and foremost, or most obviously, it remains unlawful to prescribe in states that criminalize abortion. It has even been deemed a controlled substance now in Louisiana. Second, Kaczmarek is not finished with this case. In January, seeing the writing on the wall at SCOTUS, the judge allowed 3 red states to intervene in the litigation. These states claimed that doctors in blue states were shipping mifepristone to their residents. Kaczmarek is all but guaranteed to keep that lawsuit alive, relying on the red state plaintiffs to reestablish standing. He will then presumably impose yet another nationwide restriction of mifepristone, which the Fifth Circuit will likely uphold, giving SCOTUS a Groundhog Day redo of this frivolous case. And third, the Supreme Court conspicuously declined to address an argument at the heart of the plaintiff's theory that the Comstock Act of 1873 imposes a nationwide ban on medication abortion. Conservative lawmakers and judges are foaming at the mouth to revive this zombie anti-vice law, which puritanical male legislators enacted during a fit of moral panic about women's equality. Jonathan Mitchell, one of Trump's top lawyers, has already said he believes that the former president can and will wield it as a total abortion ban if he secures a second term. Trump, whose views on abortion regulation continue to be incomprehensible, nevertheless appears to be in tacit agreement with the anti-abortion advocates that he will weaponize this law should he gain office. Although Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas brought up Comstock at oral arguments in this case, SCOTUS has ducked the matter for now, possibly in an effort to stop it from becoming a campaign issue. Should Trump prevail, Comstock will roar back with a vengeance. If you blink, you just might miss the fact that yesterday's decision is not a win for reproductive freedom, not an end to attacks on abortion, and not even the end of the road for this particular litigation. It is a status quo decision that allows the FDA to continue to regulate safe drugs, and it precludes objectors from running into courts with nothing more than feelings. But a good thing to bear in mind is that although SCOTUS dodged a bullet, the threat to abortion care looms larger than ever. Whether it's the new systemic attacks on in vitro fertilization, overt plans to use Comstock to end abortion rights by way of executive action, state court attacks on reproductive freedom, or a second, less publicized abortion case still pending at the Supreme Court. Which one, I don't know, but it's linked. Thursday wasn't a triumph for abortion rights. It was a push. It is heartening to hear Kavanaugh offer up a full-throated defense of standing, even in a case in which he might favor the plaintiff's goals, accompanied by a renunciation of manufactured disputes and litigation by feelings. But this case was a direct result of a string of huge legal victories for those seeking to restrict access to basic reproductive care, who are exploiting a Supreme Court profoundly sympathetic to their aims. If there is a winner in this outrageous case, it is merely the principle that there is possibly, at least in a presidential election year, still such a thing as too far for a court that has shown scant inclination to police that line. All right, well put, as usual, for the two of them there. And that's eaten up the bulk of our third segment. So hanging on to at least one other recorded segment until later. Let me see what else I had lined up in pocket so I can make a decision between more of those stories or another recorded segment. As I said, I'm still hanging on to 2 here. All right, we've covered most of these things that we've put away at first. Oh, yeah, and we got to the liquor license story. All right, there's a couple of weird things that I thought I might share with you that are particularly good Friday stories. Here's one that's, nothing's ever non-political, of course, but just this one struck me as an interesting societal story, and of course has political implications as well. You can figure them out as we go along. We'll talk about them. A Gizmodo story here. AI as the topic, and AI is the topic number 1 for almost everybody these days. I don't know why. Seems like, well, I'm hoping it finally goes away, like NFTs, but they're still around too. Anyway, AI causing all sorts of problems, and chiefly among, academics and others who are worried that either students will be using AI to write their papers or, various other variants of the same problem. And so this is really interesting. Not only have a number of cottage industries, multi-billion-dollar startups that siphon money off of something else, that are cottages. I guess for billionaires, these are cottages. But starting up or things that enable idiotic tech companies to say they're adding AI to something that nobody really wants it in anyway. But in addition, the backlash against AI has also created an industry in detecting AI. And everybody wants to be able to do that. And everybody believes, oh my gosh, they instantly believe, millions of students across the country are cheating by using chatbot, or chat GPT to write their papers. And we need to be able to detect it. And because if you go into it believing that that's happening and you use one of the detection apps and it starts turning up positives for, indicating that AI has been used to write this paper, this is the prior belief that you went in there with, and it confirms your priors, and you start, disciplining, flunking these students, what have you, without ever giving any thought to, what is this app I bought? What if this app is just, it's got a routine where you can plug in the text, and then no matter what you plug in, let's say 75% of the time, just random number generator. And if these numbers come up, you say, yep, AI was used. And if these numbers come up, you say, nope, AI wasn't used. Like, what obligation do you have to provide an actual working detector device? I'm not sure that there is one. And I know that there hasn't been time for developing standards for that. So guess what? AI detectors get it wrong. Writers are being fired anyway. So this is in the employment context. You submit an article to me for a journal or a magazine or a newspaper. I run it through this thing. I want to know. I don't want AI generated content in my publication of whatever kind, whether it's a gossip rag or a medical journal. I don't want it. I don't know why you would be so upset about it in a gossip rag, but let's say you are, and you start firing people on the basis of what this possibly fake app is telling you. AI is already stealing writers' work, the subheader reminds us. Now, on top of all that, they're losing their jobs over false accusations of using it. This is fascinating and a good spot by Thomas Germain, again, published in Gizmodo. Unless, of course, AI wrote it and Thomas Germain is fake. Kimberly Gasuras, Gasuras. Kimberly Gasuras doesn't use AI. I don't know if you knew that, but that's true. If you ever run into Kimberly, she doesn't use AI. I don't need it, she said. I've been a news reporter for 24 years. How do you think I did all that work? That logic wasn't enough, though, to save her job. AI wasn't around for all those 24 years. You were fine with her for 20 years, 24. And then all of a sudden, now you think she's been cheating in the last 6 months? What about the last 24 years? Didn't matter. As a local journalist in, Bucyrus, maybe, Ohio? Oh, my goodness. All right, Ohioans, you let me know. Bucyrus. Sorry. Well, as a local journalist there, Gasuras relies on side hustles to pay the bills. I guess it's just not a huge media market, maybe. I would have thought that would be a multi-billion-dollar media market. Bucyrus, Ohio. I don't know what major media market it's a part of. But anyway, she relied on side hustles to pay the bills, as many people do. For a while, she made good money on a freelance writing platform called Writers Access, where she wrote blogs and other content for small and mid-sized companies. Maybe I need to supplement our income here with that. Anyway, halfway through 2023, the income plummeted as some clients switched to ChatGPT for their writing needs. So it was already a difficult time. And then the email came. I don't think, do I have room for dramatic music? I think so. The email came. What did the email say? Well, let's roll our outro music, and then we'll start reading from it so that we'll be on time. I got only one warning. Well, she's not going to read us the email, but tell us about it instead. I got only one warning. I got this message saying they'd flagged my work as AI using a tool called Originality. It's an original name for your original tool. She was dumbfounded. Gasuris wrote back to defend her innocence, but she never got a response. They couldn't even use ChatGPT to answer her. Originality costs money, but Gasuris started running her work through it just to see what they were seeing.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. It's a banner day. I have a note from Ohio and Scott here who tells me that the Bucyrus pronunciation is correct. So I'm moving. Time to move to Ohio. Bucyrus, here I come. We'd had a pronunciation issue the other day, and was it Medina? Is that right? And is that the correct pronunciation? I couldn't even pronounce the word correct correctly. Oh my God. I should just get right back to the story. But Medina, and I had said Medina, like the I wonder, is it named for Medina? But like the Middle Eastern Medina. But it's Medina in Ohio, and I should have remembered that, and I guess I didn't. And I think I learned that pronunciation from gun fail stories at some point. Somebody, I think, shooting in their backyard and spraying bullets all over the neighborhood is the one that stands out for me. But anyway, Bucyrus is correct. More importantly, the AI story that's going on there where Kimberly Gasuris, is that right, Kimberly? I better go back to the top and check that. Yes, Kimberly Gasuris finds out from one of the writer platforms, Writers Access, where she was making extra money on the side, that booted her out and said, we're not going to take your articles anymore because you're using AI, according to a tool we bought and used called Originality. We ran your work through it, and Originality, the Originality app, is saying you're using AI, and we believe them, that app, whatever that might be, them, they, it, more than you, the human, in all of this. Computers, of course, are infallible, except for their ability to use AI to write prose that is not detectable by awesome tools like Originality. So anyway, she knows who she is. She knows what she does. She's like, I didn't use AI. I know that. Let me see what's going on here. And even though Originality costs money, and now she was in a financial pinch because she was losing her access to Writers Access, she bought Originality like they did and said, let me see what they see. When I put my work in, what is this stupid program telling people? So she did it, she bought it, and she ran it through it, and a few months later, what happened was she began running her work through it. I assume she also took a look at the things that they flagged and said, why does it say that about me? Anyway, I guess what she thought the better workaround was, rather than, and she would continue to fight with them, of course, but how about if I buy originality, and when I am working on something, as I'm going along, I'll check it to make sure that I'm not going to get flagged by Writers Access for using AI, even falsely. So she would check her work ahead of time. But anyway, as it turns out, a few months later, Writers Access ended up kicking her off the platform anyway. They said, my account was suspended due to excessive use of AI. I couldn't believe it, Gasouras said. Writers Access did not respond to a request for comment. So, when ChatGPT set the world on fire a year and a half ago, and it's an inopportune time for setting the world on fire. We're already on fire. Leave us alone. It sparked a feverish search for ways to catch people trying to pass off AI text as their own writing. A host of startups launched to fill the void through AI detection tools with names including CopyLeaks, GPT-0, Originality.ai, and Winston AI. It makes for a tidy business in a landscape full of AI boogeymen. And it's very interesting and very ironic, of course. What are these tools? These are AI tools being used to detect other people's use of AI. You're unethical for using AI. Well, you're unethical for using AI. No, you're unethical for using AI to generate text. We're ethical for using AI to detect when you used AI to generate text. We're trying to ungenerate text. But aren't you a publishing company? Shouldn't you be trying to generate text? Leave me alone. You're fired. Anyway, these companies that sell the detectors advertise peace of mind, a way to take back control through, quote, proof and, quote, accountability. Some advertise accuracy rates as high as 99.98%. But a growing body of experts, studies, and industry insiders argue these tools are far less reliable than their makers promise. There's no question that AI detectors make frequent mistakes, and innocent bystanders get caught in the crossfire. Countless students have been accused of AI plagiarism, but a quieter epidemic is happening in the professional world. Some writing gigs are drying up thanks to chatbots. As people fight over the dwindling field of work, writers are losing their jobs over false accusations from AI detectors. And isn't it interesting if the same people are writing it? I am not only the author of a AI text generator that I advertise to publications can be used to replace costly live people for generating your text, but I also am the manufacturer of an app that will facilitate further firing my competition by telling you that they're guilty of AI plagiarism. And when you fire them, you can replace them for free. Comparatively, but you have to, of course, pay a licensing fee. I hope I've monetized this in some way, right? But I will not only sell you an AI bot that will write in place of humans that you lay off, but those humans that haven't been laid off can be fired via my other product. And then when you fire them, rather than trying to replace them, just replace them with more use of my original AI product. Be rather fiendish, wouldn't it? Well, this technology doesn't work the way people are advertising it, says Bars. Oh boy. The guy's name is Bars. Yeah. Juhas, I'm going to guess, is the pronunciation of Juhaszz. Well, anyway, he's the co-founder of Undetectable AI, which makes tools to help people humanize AI text in order to sneak it past detection software. A third genre. We have lots of concerns around the reliability of the training process these AI detectors use. These guys are claiming to have 99% accuracy, and based on our work, I think that's impossible. But even if it's true, that still means for every 100 people, there's going to be one false flag. We're talking about people's livelihoods and their reputations. So what's up here? Safeguard or snake oil? In general, AI detectors work by spotting the hallmarks of AI penmanship, such as perfect grammar and punctuation. Is that right? In fact, one of the easiest ways to get your work flagged is to use Grammarly, a tool that checks for spelling and grammatical errors. It even suggests ways to rewrite sentences for clarity using, you guessed it, artificial intelligence. Adding insult to injury, Gizmodo spoke to writers who said they were fired by platforms that required them to use Grammarly. Gizmodo confirmed the details of these stories, but we are excluding the names of certain freelance platforms because writers signed non-disclosure agreements, probably written by AI. Detectors look for more telling factors as well, such as burstiness. I don't know what that means. Let's see if it tells us. Human writers are more likely to reuse certain words in clusters or bursts, while AI is more likely to distribute words evenly across a document. AI detectors can also assess perplexity, which essentially asks an AI to measure the likelihood that it would have produced a piece of text given the model's training data. Some companies, such as industry leader Originality AI, train their own AI language models specially made to detect the work of other AIs, which are meant to spot patterns that are too complex for the human mind, they say. Anyway, however, none of these techniques are foolproof, and many major institutions have backed away from this class of tools. OpenAI released its own AI detector to quell fears about its product in 2023, but pulled the tool off the market just months later due to its low rate of accuracy. The academic world was the first to adopt AI detectors, but false accusations pushed a long list of universities to ban the use of AI detection software, including Vanderbilt, Michigan State, Northwestern, and the University of Texas at Austin. They must have caught the kids of wealthy donors, I suppose. AI detection companies are in the business of selling snake oil, says Deborah Weber Wolf, a professor at the University of Applied Sciences for Engineering and Economics. That sounds foreign. It is. It's in Berlin. Who co-authored a recent paper about the effectiveness of AI detection, according to Weber Wolf, or Weber Wolf, I suppose. Research shows that AI detectors are inaccurate, unreliable, and easy to fool. People want to believe that there can be some magic software that solves their problems. Well, that's always been true. But computer software cannot solve social problems. We have to find other solutions. The companies that make AI detectors say they are a necessary but imperfect tool in a world inundated by robot-generated text. There's a significant demand for these services, whether or not they're effective. So, there's no regulatory scheme, right? So, what the hell? Alex Cui, C-U-I, I don't know, Chief Technology Officer for the AI detection company GPT-0, said detectors have meaningful shortcomings, but the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. We see a future where, if nothing has changed, the internet becomes more and more dictated by AI. Whether it's news, peer-reviewed articles, marketing, you don't even know if the person you're talking to on social media is real, he said. We need a solution for confirming knowledge en masse and determining whether content is high quality, authentic, and of legitimate authorship. I mean, we do need those things. He's right about that. Gosh, the article is longer than I expected. I'd like to get to the end of it here. Let's see. We'll read a little bit more. No one claims AI detectors are perfect, including the companies that make them. But Originality and other AI detectors send mixed messages about how their tools should be used. For example, Gillum said, "We advise against the tool being used within academia and strongly recommend against being used for disciplinary action." Chris Rufo, of course, has already taken his scalps using this, so it may be too late for that. But he explained the risk of false positives is too high for students because they submit a small number of essays throughout a school year, but the high volume of work produced by a professional writer means the algorithm may have more chances to get it right. However, one of the company's blog posts in one, Originality, says AI detection is essential in the classroom. Then there are questions about how the results are presented. Many of the writers Gizmodo spoke to said their clients don't understand the limitations of AI detectors or even what the results are actually saying. It's easy to see how someone might be confused. I ran one of my own articles through Originality's AI detectors. The results were 70% original and 30% AI. You might assume that means Originality determined that 30% of the article is written by a chatbot, especially because the tool highlights specific sentences it finds suspects. However, it's actually a confidence score. Originality is 70% sure that a human wrote the text. I wrote the thing myself, but you'll just have to take my word for it. So that's interesting, right? Just misinterpretation of the results. 70% original, 30% AI. That's the way normal people would read that. And it would take minimal effort to say, I'm 70% sure this was written by a human. Easy. But of course, the user interface is written by, AI people and tech people who can't write. Anyway, there's the way the company describes its algorithm. According to Originality, the latest version of its tool has a 98.8% accuracy rate, but Originality also says its false positive rate is 2.8%. If you got a calculator handy, you probably don't even need it, you'll notice that this adds up to more than 100%. Gillum said that's because these numbers come from two different sets, or maybe two different AI chatbots. In Originality's defense, the company provides a detailed explanation of how you should interpret the information right below the results, along with risks to more detailed write-ups, links to more detailed write-ups about how to use the tool. It seems that isn't enough, though. Gizmodo spoke to several writers who said they had to argue with clients who misunderstood the Originality tool. Originality has published numerous blog posts and studies about accuracy and other issues, including the data set and methodology it used to develop a measuring tool of its own. However, Weber Wolf at the University of Applied Sciences in Berlin said the details about Originality's methodology were not that clear. A number of experts Gizmodo spoke to, such as Juhas of Undetectable AI, said they had concerns about businesses across the AI detection industry inflating their accuracy rates and misleading their customers. Representatives for GPT-0 and Originality said their companies are committed to openness and transparency. Both companies said they go out of their way to provide clear information about the limitations and shortcomings of their tools. It might feel like being against AI detectors is being on the side of writers, but according to Gillum, the opposite is true. If there are no detectors, then the competition for writing jobs increases, and as a result, the pay drops, he says. Detectors are the difference between a writer being able to do their work, submit content, and get compensated for it, and somebody being able to just copy and paste something from ChatGPT. On the other hand, all of the copywriters Gizmodo spoke to said the AI detectors are the problem. AI is the future. There's nothing we can do to stop it, but in my opinion, that's not the issue. I can see a lot of ways that AI can be useful, Mark said. I forget who Mark is along the way. It's these detectors. They're the ones saying with the utmost certainty that they can detect AI writing, and they're the ones who are making our clients on edge and paranoid and putting us out of jobs. Well, you think somebody could use maybe, AI to write clearer instructions about how to use these AI detection tools, but there's going to be problems nonetheless. All right. We have just enough time here, I think, to run Darwin's latest. This is another interesting, great Friday article. I should get right to it or else we're going to run out of time. It's lengthy, but useful and interesting and thought-provoking all at once. So let's do it already.
Hello, Kagro.
Hello,
KITM family. Darwin Darko here, reporting as your senior sports correspondent.
Sports.
Today's article, reading from The Atlantic, Jamel Hill. Some of you may be familiar. She used to be on ESPN. She wrote up a piece here titled The One Downside of Gender Equality in Sports. The WNBA's newfound popularity has triggered a boom in commentary from men who have no idea what they're talking about. By Jamel Hill. All right, this was written back on the 3rd of June. She begins. As a female journalist who has covered women's sports for years, I have long dreamed of the day that female athletes would demand the level of media attention traditionally reserved for men. Now that day is finally here, and it's a lot less satisfying than I imagined. The arrival of a dynamic WNBA rookie class headlined by the sensational Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese has prompted an explosion of coverage of women's basketball. But, and perhaps I should have anticipated this, the surge in popularity has come at a cost. Ill-informed male sports analysts are suddenly chiming in about the league and its players, offering narratives untethered to facts and occasionally making me long for the days when the WNBA largely flew under the radar. Much of the discourse revolves around Clark, the former University of Iowa star who became the all-time college scoring leader this season and is one of the most remarkable players the sport has ever seen. A persistent theme has emerged that WNBA players, particularly the veterans, are jealous of Clark and resent the attention she has been getting when they should be groveling at her feet. A few weeks ago, for example, the Hall of Fame former player and beloved commentator Charles Barkley accused WNBA players of being petty and declared, "Y'all should be thanking that girl for getting y'all as private charters all the money and visibility she's bringing to the WNBA." The narrative escalated over the weekend during a matchup between Clark's team, the Indiana Fever, and Chicago Sky, which features Reese, who has been Clark's nemesis since they faced off in the NCAA championship game 2 years ago. During Saturday's game, Reese's teammate Kennedy Charter leveled Clark with a body check during a stoppage in play. Reese, who was on the bench at the time, leaped up to applaud the cheap shot. The Fever went on to win. Carter and Clark had been mixing it up throughout the game, but things should have never escalated to that point. The hit was dirty and should have been flagged as a flagrant foul in the moment rather than upgraded after a post-game review. Reese's reaction, while perhaps unsurprising given her long-running personal rivalry with Clark, was inappropriate. But instead of analyzing the incident for what it is, intense competition gone wrong, the male punditry rushed to assign collective blame to the legions of Clark's supposed haters around the league. The former NBA player turned analyst Austin Rivers, for example, posted a video ripping female players for their lack of gratitude. "If your girls were Destiny's Child, she would be Beyonce," he said. Wow, I didn't even see that one. Instead of hating on Clark, he added, WNBA players needed to appreciate her. It's about that time. We need to grow up and move on. Pay respect. In men's sports, of course, tough defense, physical play, trash talk, and personal rivalries are celebrated, applauded, and marketed. NBA history is filled with stories of personal grudges, including some that featured plenty of dirty play and has lasted well past athletes' playing career. See Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas. These stories are embraced and told with affection. In fact, one of the criticisms that some fans have of today's NBA is that the players have gotten too friendly and the game itself too soft. When it comes to hard-nosed play against Clark, however, male pundits seem unable to see women as fierce competitors. They just see mean girls. Reese herself has been on the wrong end of some welcome to the league fouls, most recently a throat grab body slam by the Connecticut Sun's Elisa Thomas. "They don't give a damn if I'm a rookie," Reese said afterwards. "They're not supposed to be nice to me." As more and more male pundits opine on women's basketball, some of the analysis is just plain cringeworthy. In April, in the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament, Clark put up 41 points and 12 assists in a decisive victory over Louisiana State University, the defending champion. After the game, the NBA Hall of Fame player Paul Pierce offered scintillating analysis on Fox Sports, a talk show undisputed. "I'ma just keep it 100 with you," Pierce said. "We saw a white girl from Iowa do it to a bunch of black girls. That gained my respect." His fellow panelists nodded in agreement. A white woman dominating black opponents in women's college hoops sure does sound remarkable, unless you know anything at all about the history of the sport. Women's college ball has been littered with dominant white players. In 2021, the University of Connecticut star Paige Bueckers, a favorite to be the top pick in next year's WNBA draft, was the first freshman woman to win the John R. Wooden Award, given to the best player in the nation. Breanna Stewart, the reigning WNBA MVP, won 4 straight national championships and 3 National Player of the Year awards at UConn. The NCAA women's record holder for most career points before Clark was Kelsey Plum, a white point guard who now plays for the WNBA's Las Vegas Aces. At least Pierce's comment, however ignorant, was meant to be complimentary. The same can't be said of the more recent avalanche of male punditry, which drips with condescension and stereotypes about women's behavior. After Clark's team lost its first several games of the season, for example, some male analysts suggest that the league should be rigged to allow Clark to succeed for the benefit of the sport's popularity. The WNBA is playing this all wrong, the NBA journeyman Jeff Teague said on his podcast Club 520. The league, he said, should mimic professional wrestling. pulling its punches against Clark. It's supposed to be like WWE. Y'all are supposed to play hard against her, but let her kill. The Fox Sports radio host Colin Cowherd made a similar argument on the air a few weeks ago. The WNBA had erred on his view by making Clark play against strong competition to begin the season. So they finally have this moment, Cowherd said. Don't put Caitlin Clark up in the first 4 games against New York twice and Connecticut twice, the best defensive teams. What Cowherd may not realize is that the WNBA has only 12 teams, and the top 8 qualify for the season. There just aren't a lot of weak links. Clark's team is one of the few, which is why they've had the top pick in the draft the past 2 years. In the WNBA, just like in men's sports, the best college players tend to have to take their lumps for a few years on a lousy team. No one was saying that the NBA should go easy on Victor Wembanyama, lowly San Antonio Spurs this past season. Now, in fairness, Cowherd wasn't saying that the WNBA should pamper Clark just because she's a woman. In fact, he claimed men's professional league pulled these kinds of shenanigans all the time. The NFL purposely gave the Chicago Bears an easy beginning of season schedule this year. He said so that their new quarterback, the number 1 draft pick, Caleb Williams, would get acclimated before facing tough competition or appearing on national TV. Likewise, Cowherd said when Major League Soccer wanted to make sure that Lionel Messi ended up on a major market team, it ignored salary cap rules so that Miami could sign him to a big contract. This analysis was even sillier than his WNBA commentary. The Bears will be on primetime national TV in the second week of the season, facing the Houston Texans, a playoff team that won its division last year. As for Messi, the MLS has set aside non-salary cap slots for star international players since 2007. So at least Cowherd didn't limit his wacky fact-free theorizing to just women. Maybe that's progress. Maybe the fact that the WNBA is finally being subjected to the same absurd, often ignorant debates as men's sports is just what equality looks like. Still, it rankles. When I hosted ESPN's SportsCenter in 2017, anytime I flubbed a name or statistic, legions of viewers would declare on social media that it was proof that women shouldn't be discussing men's sports. Men, by contrast, are allowed to laugh and even brag about how little they know about the women's game. Last month, the ESPN talk show host and former NFL punter Pat McAfee posted from the sidelines of a New York Liberty game. Has this Liberty team ever lost? He wrote on X. This might be the greatest team assembled of all time. I'm glad McAfee was enjoying the W, as the WNBA is often called. The Liberty are indeed a very good team. So good, in fact, that they made the WNBA finals last year, where they got smoked by the Aces, who are going for their 3rd straight WNBA title this year. So yes, the Liberty team has lost. When the WNBA analyst Carolyn Peck called him out, McAfee replied sarcastically, I and my show will not speak about the W until we know everything about it. Look, he might have a point. Perhaps longtime women's sports fans should stop holding male pundits to even the most basic standards of knowledgeability. I mean, I wouldn't want to appear ungrateful that men are finally paying attention. That would just be petty. Jamel Hill is a contributing writer for The Atlantic. And thanks for listening. I'm Darwin Darko. Back to you, David.
Hey, thanks, Darwin. It's good to have you back, and glad we were able to fit that in today. That was a good exit into the weekend, I think. By the way, though, if you mashed together the previous 2 stories, the AI detector stories and the sports story here, I think you might get to something like this one, which I've been holding on to. Won't have a chance to read all the way through it, but I thought we'll give you the gist of it. A USA Today article by Bob Nightingale under the headline, Getting Death Threats from Aggrieved Gamblers. Major League Baseball players starting to fear for their safety. You see the premise of what's going on here? Essentially, we'll begin it this way. They receive death threats. They are followed home by strangers. They are abused and derided. They are Major League Baseball players who can tell you all about the menacing threats that have been inflicted upon their lives since Major League Baseball and gambling companies got into bed together. Remember when they used to ban people for life for gambling? You hear it all, man. Arizona Diamondbacks closer Paul Sewald told USA Today Sports, you blow a save, you don't come through, you get it all. And then some expletives, I guess, showing up in his expletive, you suck, but Morse. I mean, they get that all the time. They have to go to the ballpark and hear that from people yelling it into the stands, or from the stands. But guess this is the new twist. You cost me all this money. F you, F your family. I'm going to kill you and then kill your family. It gets ugly really quickly, and it's scary and it's sad. It used to be the fans who were upset because you blew a game for the team. That's one thing. But now it's gambling. These people don't really care about the Diamondbacks. They just care about their bets. And we're talking about money they don't have that they're losing. So it's a very scary spot. Yeah, what an interesting twist, right? It's one thing to get upset with your favorite team losing a game, and I guess you could just call it sort of like a gentle ribbing, right? And you sit and yell at them, you bums, you didn't win the game. And all it is you're just sad that your favorite team isn't winning. But if you're losing money and you're not even particularly a fan of the team even, that's kind of a formula for disaster. And just weird now. You mash those two things together, right? Sports betting is going to somehow kill us all. And I guess now Major League Baseball players, they've always had to, deal with the notoriety of being famous and, of course, being blamed for losses. But again, by fans of the team, fans of the game. Now when it's fans of money, I mean, there are really people who are emailing and contacting baseball players by social media and maybe even quite seriously saying, hey, you owe me that money. You lost the game and I lost money. You better pay me back. Like, you don't know. A fan might make that comment almost tongue in cheek, but a gambler, we don't know who these people are, how serious they are, and if they don't love the team, maybe they mean it when they say they're going to kill these players. I have no idea. Maybe they're Russian gangsters for all we know. What if they are going to kill them? Anyway, I just thought that was weird. And I don't know, somehow it summed up the previous two articles nicely. All right, time for us to make our exit for the weekend. There's still plenty more to tell you about. We'll come back on Monday and tell you yet more about it. Rosalind even has an additional recorded segment we couldn't get to today. But it's time to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Here's what he's got on tap. Let's see. Striking back at Trump, Fulton County DA Fani Willis has filed a motion to dismiss his appeal to remove her as prosecutor. That's good. That could lead to the case being sent back to the trial judge in time for setting a trial to begin before November. What about elsewhere in the country? Educational material from propaganda chop shop PragerU is now taught in public schools in 6 states. Garbage.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
How about this one? Top executives of the California-based online mental health company arrested in a $100 million scheme to improperly prescribe Adderall during the pandemic. And now we're out of Adderall. People who need it are unable to get it everywhere around the country and around the world. Just like this collection of news coming up next. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned.